Assalamu alaikum students, this is your teacher Muhammad Umar Khatak for the subject Organizational Theory and Behavior. This is our 27th lecture and today we'll be starting chapter number 11, Communications. And the topic of our discussion is Functions of Communication, Direction of Communication, and Modes of Communication. Communication. Communication must include both the transfer and the understanding of meaning. Communicating is more than merely imparting meaning, that meaning must also be understood. It is only thus that we can convey information and ideas. In perfect communication, if it existed, a thought would be transmitted so that receiver understood the same mental picture the sender intended. Though it sounds elementary, perfect communication is never achieved in practice. Communication serves 5 major functions within a group or organization: management, feedback, emotional sharing, persuasion, and information exchange. Communication acts to manage member behavior in several ways. Organizations have authority, hierarchies, and formal guidelines employees are required to follow. When employees follow their job descriptions or comply with company policies, communication performs a management function. Informal communication controls behavior too. When work groups tease or harass a member who produces too much and makes the rest of the members look bad, they are informally communicating and managing the member's behavior. Communication creates feedback by clarifying to employees what they must do, how well they are doing it, and how they can improve their performance. Formation of goals, feedback on progress, and reward for desired behavior all require communication and stimulate motivation. The work group is a primary source of social interaction for many employees. Communication within the group is a fundamental mechanism by which members show satisfaction and frustrations. Communication therefore provides for the emotional sharing of feelings and fulfillment of social needs. For example, after a white police officer shot an unarmed black man in Ferguson, Missouri in 2015, software engineer Carl Jones wanted to process his feelings through talking with his co-workers at his corporation. As a second example, Starbucks had baristas write "race together" on coffee cups to start conversation about race relationships. In both cases, the initial communications were awkward, so awkward that the Starbucks pulled the campaign. But Jones and others have forged solid relationships from their emotional sharing. Like emotional sharing, persuasion can be good or bad depending on if, say, a leader is trying to persuade a work group to believe in the organization commitment to corporate social responsibility, or to conversely persuade the work group to break the law to meet an organizational goal. These may be extreme examples, but it's important to remember that persuasion can benefit or harm an organization. The final function of communication is information exchange to facilitate decision making. Communication provides information individuals and groups need to make decisions by transmitting the data needed to identify and evaluate choices. Almost every organization and every communication interaction that takes place in a group or organization performs one or more of these functions, and none of the 5 is more important than the others. To perform effectively, groups need to maintain some control over members, provide feedback to stimulate members to perform, allow emotional expression, monitor the persuasive efforts of individual, and encourage information exchange. Before communication can take place, it needs a purpose, a message to be conveyed between a sender and a receiver. The sender encodes the message, converts it into a symbolic form, and passes it through a medium to the receiver, who decodes it. The result is transfer of meaning from one person to another. The exhibit 11.1, the diagram, depicts the communication process. The key parts of this model are: number one, the sender; number two, the encoding; number three, the message; number four, the channel; number five, decoding; number six, the receiver; number seven, noise; and number eight, feedback. The sender initiates a message by encoding a thought. The message is the actual physical product of the sender's encoding. When we speak, the speech is a message. When we write, the writing is the message. When we gesture, the movement of our arms and expressions on our faces are the message. The channel is the medium through which the message travels. The sender selects it, determines whether to use formal or informal channels. Formal channels are established by the organization and transmit messages related to the professional activities of the members. They traditionally follow the authority chain within the organization. Other forms of messages, such as personal or social, follow informal channels, which are spontaneous and subject to individual choice. The receiver is the person to whom the message is directed, who must first translate the symbols into understandable form. This step is the decoding of the message. Noise represents communication barriers that distort the clarity of the message, such as perceptual problems, information overload, semantic difficulties, or cultural differences. The final link in the communication process is a feedback loop. Feedback is the check on how successful we have been in transferring our message as originally intended. It determines whether understanding has been achieved or not. Direction of communication. The communication can flow vertically or laterally through formal small group networks or informal grapevine. We subdivide the vertical dimensions into downward and upward communication. Downward communication. Communication that flows from one level of a group or organization to a lower level is downward communication. Group leaders and managers use it to assign goals, provide job instructions, explain policies and procedures, point out problems that need attention, and offer feedback. In downward communication, managers must explain the reasons why a decision was made. Another problem in downward communication is its one-way nature. Generally, managers inform employees but rarely solicit their advice or opinions. Research revealed that nearly two-thirds of employees said their bosses rarely or never ask their advice. The study noted organizations are always striving for higher employee engagement, but evidence indicates they unnecessarily create fundamental mistakes. People need to be respected and listened to. The way advice is solicited also matters. Employees will not provide input even when the conditions are favorable, if doing so seems against their best interests. In downward communication, the delivery mode and the context of information exchange are of high importance. The best communicators explain the reasons behind their downward communication, but also solicit communication from the employees they supervise. A review is probably the one time when you want to be physically present. A conference call cannot substitute for face to face interactions. Automated performance reviews have allowed managers to review their subordinates without discussions, which is efficient but misses critical opportunities for growth, motivation, and relationship building. In general, employees subjected to less than direct, personalized communication are less likely to understand the intentions of the message correctly. Now, this leads us to the next direction, the upward communication. Upward communication. Upward communication flows to a higher level in the group or organization. It, it's used to provide feedback to higher ups, inform them of progress towards goal, and relay current problems. Upward communication keeps managers aware of how employees feel about their jobs, co-worker, and organization in general. Managers also rely on upward communication for ideas on how conditions can be improved. Given that most managers' job responsibility have expanded, upward communication is increasingly difficult because managers can be overwhelmed and easily distracted. To engage in effective upward communication, try to communicate in short summaries rather than long explanations. Support your summaries with actionable items and prepare an agenda to make sure you use your boss's attention well. And watch what you say, especially if you're communicating something to your manager that will be unwelcome. If you're turning down an assignment, for example, be sure to project a can do attitude while asking advice about your workload dilemma or inexperience with the assignment. Your delivery can be as important as the content of your communication. Lateral communication. When communication occurs between members of the same work group, members at the same level in a separate work groups, or any other horizontally equivalent workers, we describe it as lateral communication. Lateral communication saves time and facilitates coordination. Some lateral relationships are formally sanctioned. More often, they are informally created to short circuit the vertical hierarchy and expedite action. So, from management's viewpoint, lateral communication can be good or bad because strictly adhering to the formal vertical structure for all communications can be inefficient. Lateral communication occurring with management's knowledge and support can be beneficial. But dysfunctional conflict can result when formal vertical channels are breached, when members go above or around their superiors, or when bosses find actions have been taken or decisions made without their knowledge. Formal small groups networks. Formal organizational networks can be complicated, including hundreds of people and half dozen or more hierarchical levels. We have condensed these networks into three common small groups of five people each: chain, wheel, and all channel. The chain rigidly follows the formal chain of command. This network approximates the communication channels you might find in a rigid three level organization. The wheel relies on a central figure to act as the conduit for all group communication. It simulates the communication network you might find on a team with a strong leader. The all channel network permits group members to actively communicate with each other. It's most often characterized by self managed teams in which group members are free to contribute and no one person takes on a leadership role. Many organizations today like to consider themselves all channels, meaning that anyone can communicate with anyone. Now, this Exhibit 11.2 demonstrates the effectiveness of each network is determined by the dependent variable that concerns. The structure of the wheel facilitates the emergence of the leader. The all-channel network is best if you desire higher member satisfaction, and the chain is best if accuracy is more important. Now, this exhibit leads us to the conclusion that no single network will be best for all occasions. The grapevine. The informal communication network in a group or organization is called the grapevine. Although rumors and gossip transmitted through the grapevine may be informal, it's still an important source of information for employees and candidates. Grapevine or word of mouth information from peers about a company has important effects on whether job applicants join an organization. The grapevine is an important part of any group or organization communication network. It serves employees' needs. Small talk creates a sense of closeness and friendship among those who share information, although research suggests often does so at the expense of those in the outgroup. It also gives manager a feel for the morale of the organization, identifies issues employees consider important, and helps them tap into anxieties. Evidence indicate that managers can study the gossip driven largely by employee social networks to learn more about how positive and negative information is flowing through the organizations. Managers can furthermore identify influencers by noting which individuals are small talkers. Small talkers tend to be influencers. One study found that the social talkers are so influential that they were significantly more likely to retain their jobs during layoffs. Thus, while grapevine may not be sanctioned or controlled by the organization, it can be understood and leveraged a bit. Could managers entirely eliminate the gossip and rumors common to the grapevine if they so chose? No. Should they want to? Maybe not. In addition to the opportunities for managers to learn from the grapevine, some forms of gossip provides pro-social motivation for employees to help each other achieve organizational goals. What managers should do is minimize the negative consequences of rumors by limiting their range and impact. A few suggestions for practically dealing with the gossip and rumors. Number one is to share the information you have and the information you don't. While there is good formal communication with much information, there is no need for rumors. When you don't know the information that others are seeking, discuss when you will know and follow up. Number two, explain. Explain. As a manager, discuss what decisions are made and why were made, as well as the plan going forward. Respond to rumors non committedly and then verify for yourself the truths you can. Make certain to gather all sides of the story. Invite. Invite people to discuss their concerns, ideas, suggestions, thoughts, and feelings about organizational matters. Help them frame their thoughts into more objective viewpoints. Modes of communication. How do group members transfer meaning among each other? They rely on oral, written, and nonverbal communication. This much is obvious, but as we will discuss, the choice between modes can greatly enhance or detract from the way the perceiver reacts to the message. Certain modes are highly preferred for specific types of communication. We will cover the latest thinking and practical applications. Oral communication. A primary means of conveying message is oral communication. Speeches, formal one-to-one, and group discussions, and informal rumor mill or grapevine are popular forms of oral communications. The advantages of oral communication are speed, feedback, and exchange. We can convey a verbal message and receive a response in minimal time. As one professional put it, face-to-face communication on a consistent basis is still the best way to get information to and from employees. If the receiver is unsure of the message, rapid feedback allows the sender to quickly detect and correct it. The feedback we receive includes information and emotional content. However, we should acknowledge that we are usually bad listeners. Researchers indicate that we are prone to listeners' burnout, in which we tune the other person out and rush to offer advice. Written communication. Written communication includes letters, email, instant messaging, organizational periodicals, and any other method that conveys written words or symbols. Written business communication today is usually conducted via letters, PowerPoints, emails, instant messaging, text messaging, social media, apps, and blogs. Nonverbal communication. Every time we deliver a verbal communication, we also impart an unspoken message. Sometimes the nonverbal component may stand alone as a powerful message of our business communication. No discussion of communication would thus be complete without consideration of nonverbal communication, which includes body movement, the annotation or emphasis we give to words, facial expressions, and the physical distance between the sender and the receiver. We could argue that every body movement has meaning, and no movement is accidental. Though some are unconscious, we act out our state of being with nonverbal body language. For example, we smile to project trustworthiness, uncross our arms to appear approachable, and stand to signal authority. Body language can convey status, level of engagement, and emotional state. Body language adds to and often complicates verbal communication. In fact, studies indicate that people read much more about another's attitude and emotions from their nonverbal cues than their words. If nonverbal cues conflict with the speaker's verbal message, the cues are sometimes more likely to be believed by the listener. This is the end of the lecture. Thank you.